coming to realize that probably this money was cut out for a certain group, not them. And many that used to approach us about this money and would give them directions on where to get further information would tell you, that thing is so complicated. And Chair, this is not a matter of audit, but a matter about the entire project that raised so high the expectations of our women in the country across board. But eventually the results are saying different things. Chair, the women would go to the banks they ask them to work with, and the banks will tell them there is no money. They couldn't process anything. I really wanted PS to begin by, because the project, yes, you're saying it goes up to 2027, but there is no hope among the women. Which kind of women really have benefited so far, and which kind of women are you targeting?
But as a procedural matter, I know if we much grow, the level of interest is high on grow. Even the country, people want to know what is going on with the grow. Can we pack his question and persuade members to quickly look at this and go for grow? We want to measure on it a little bit for the public to appreciate what you do, but and then we have direction, because this time the leading agency on grow is the Ministry of Gender, if I'm not mistaken. You are the leading agency. Therefore, we are going to give grow project audit adequate time. So can we go through the main ministry and we take 1 hour or 2, then we tackle grow, as our team quickly go through the financials and find out what is wrong. May I suggest the 3 of you find space either in my office, if you need be, for about 20 minutes, and Kalembe is around. She'll be able to guide us. The next room is empty in case we need you. But let's first do one item that I think may even define how we proceed of the original audit report, not on your, I know you focused on it, of approved budget. Now, our main concern, budget of 363.4 billion, infamy system-based report, the total warrants for the year amounted to 303.0.8, and says below is the breakdown of this budget and warrants. So we start with the wage. The warrant of the wage is equal to the budget. The recurrent non-wage was warranted 237. Development 5 warranted 2.6. External funding 122 billion. It was warranted 57. And then you have areas of 1.189, all of it warranted, so lucky, and hope you paid. But then we have challenges if you go to page 20 of the accounts. Page 20 of the accounts is in the middle there. We want to ensure we harmonize this account with, it's called the appropriation account. We want to make sure we harmonize this table, these two tables. So, sir, if we are to go through the table of revenue, we are going to look at the final revised budget, which is column, which is A, C, which is A plus B. Page 20 of the main financial statement is called the Statement of Appropriation based on classification of expenditure by name nature for the financial year. Are we there? Your people of accounts should help on this one. You have your figure here on this table as total revised budget is 363. Your figure on that classification is 373. So you add, no, they add non-tax revenue of 10 to get that figure. And here the auditor was saying, the approved budget for you was 363. And in the statement of appropriation, you have 173. But also to make it matters worse, when you go down on expenditure, total approved budget is, so what actually you got is 291. And what you spent is 255. And so we want to speak to those two tables. They should be speaking the same language. Why the inconsistency? And then of our interest is external funding. Okay? External funding, here you seem to have budgeted for 99. External financing. Are you there? Eh? But on this table of what is revised budget, external funding is 112. And here you seem to have, and then you were warranted 57. But on the actual performance, you see 38. Can we understand? Even when you go down to expenditure, you spent on external financing, is it reported on in expenditure? Goods and services, grants, and other transfers. Yeah, you have that's why I told my brother here to park the question of grow. And in external financing, then you take us to a bit of your segment on grow project, which is table 1. And we want to now speak to all those, because those are so critical in unpacking the whole of your audit report. You can seek the assistance of a technical person, because these are technical matters. You may need the accountant to the people who really prepare these statements to speak to them. Maybe, Chair,
They could also tell us which is the correct table that is known to them, because they seem to be.
Okay, Chair, I'll put on notice two people. The person in charge of the budget and the page 20 in our final account.
And partially page 6, sorry to take you there,
Yes.
on the project.
On the GROW report,
Yes.
on page 6.
We are looking at GROW report, not the audit now, just to pick up and harmonize those figures. Now this is question of only figures, because the GROW report form part of your external financing. So they should be consistent. What we see in GROW is what we must see in on page 20 and here.
Okay, so the senior accountant will speak to this.
Thank you, Chair. The two tables, the table on page 16 in the audit report and table on page 20 in the financial statements, are extracted from two different systems. They're extracted from two different systems, but we provide the information. Table on page 16 is extracted from the PBS, where the budget is uploaded from, and on the financial statements, page 20 comes from the IFMIS, where we do the expenditures. Now, when I come to, especially on external financing, I look at the GROW report on page 6. The PBS picked the 112, which is a combination of two financial years. And in the appropriation statement, we only picked the 99 billion that was provided.
So what was your total approved budget? You got an approved budget from Parliament.
Without the NTR. 363 billion. Without the
Honorable
10 billion.
Mutini, don't we approve NTR?
Chair, we do.
At
It's supposed
approval?
to be part of this.
But 373 billion.
373
billion.
Auditor, what was the approved budget of the ministry from appropriation, from the Appropriation Act? No, you can leave that. So the question is,
Chair,
figure of 13 the previous year and the 99 for this year to arrive at 112. You get it? And the performance of last year, you got more than what was, what you got more, 14, and then for the previous year, 16. And then you had 52. So for this year, it is the 38 is consistent. Not so?
38 is what was expended
Yes.
during the year.
Yeah, but you see, this time around, that's why we're analyzing. But to come to the project, whereby you are warranted money and you failed to utilize it to the difference of this amount. But we shall deal with that. We are going to ask you what was that money for when you come to the project. So you analyze
of the consistency concept, which requires that when you use this system, use it consistently so as to give you same results given the same data. I want to hear your comment. And you will again explain, assuming the systems are beyond your control, do you have any reconciliation that actually brings out the difference between the figures in the two tables? Because it is a requirement where given the same data, you are having different outputs in terms of results, then you must provide for reconciliation to that effect. May I hear from you?
Understand the two tables. The first table is approved budget inclusive of what we got from Parliament. Now, the 10 billion is money that she's calling NTR, and that's how we are talking about 373. Now, from the Ministry of Gender, now when she talks about systems, the performance or the program budgeting system that is used across government to do budgeting and resource allocation, Ministry of Finance provides authority to specific votes to budget for NTR at the budgeting stage. But when it comes to the level of execution, accounts by the virtue of the standard instructions given to them, they are required to capture all revenues accruing to the ministry from both NTR and the other sources, the central government transfers. Now, the difference between the two, the 363 and the 373, it is just because of NTR, because we are not mapped to budget directly, but that issue has since been resolved. Come next financial year, it is now okay. NTR is part of what we capture on the PBS. So that is just so there is no inconsistency in the figures. One table has captured all revenues, inclusive of NTR. This other one, what the auditor did, went on the PBS and captured monies that came directly from Parliament. So in any case, the 10 billion also is money that we collect and remit to the consolidated fund. That's just the reason that's why we have those two tables, but there is no discrepancy whatsoever.
Therefore, Chair, can we 20? Would we be right to say that the 10.2 billion is misplaced because you said it was not approved by Parliament? Then how is it featuring here?
Okay.
Did you say that anyway? And if you said so, why is it featuring here? Is it misplaced? Is it doctored?
Chair, I have stated that when we are preparing accounts, we have NTR generated by entities that we declare to the consolidated fund. We capture that information because we don't spend that money at source. That money is collected by the entity and declared to the consolidated fund, and Minister of Finance has the liberty of allocating that money wherever they wish. But initially, as a ministry, we had asked them that these other monies that we collect, and it's basically from two sources.
You are using too many words to answer a simple question. Was this presented before Parliament for approval? And are you aware there is also a query on the NTR?
It was part of what Finance provided to Parliament as NTR sources of government.
And therefore approved?
It is.
Then why are you misleading this committee that actually it was not approved by Parliament?
Chair, what I've said, I think we are speaking the same language, but differently. Minister of Finance,
I can recap for you very, very quickly in simple words. You've said for the other table, it has captured what was approved by Parliament.
Yes.
And this one, which has a higher figure, does not, it captures NTR, but which was not approved by Parliament. Now, again, if they retrieve your record here, It is very, very misleading. Now you are saying actually it was presented to Parliament. And when it is presented to Parliament, it is for approval. So one who retrieves your record now will fail to understand what you are saying.
Chair, what I've said is, when we collect NTR, we declare it to Minister of Finance. That's the starting point. We declare NTR to Minister of Finance.
Part of your budget.
Finance gives us ceilings. Because when you do a budget, you don't do a budget, they will give you ceilings upon which you budget. Now, those ceilings, you are supposed to be given permission to utilize the money that you collect initially. That's why I was telling the committee that this table...
Chair, for me, I rest my case in the interest of time, because I think either deliberately or otherwise, you are not explaining what we've asked. So, may I rest my case here, Chair?
How do you rest the case? Just like that?
Because, Chair, you know we have a limited time. And he's explaining and repeating what he has already said. Okay?
But
because whether figures are given by Minister of Finance or otherwise, they are brought to Parliament for approval. So meaning that both tables should be having both.
We need the person who signed on these accounts. When he sees people are not explaining properly, he comes up and explains. Otherwise, when you have your team misleading us, you're going to keep us in confusion, which is really not good at all.
Here, we collect NTR, but while we collect it and it is received by Minister of Finance and it is reflected 10.2, which was the projection made, the actual realized was 8.1. But at the end of the day, when you come down to the expenditure, that 10.2 actual 8.1 was not provided to us to expense. So that is why at the end of this revised budget, you have the 10 deducted, because although it was collected as revenue, it wasn't spent at source, it wasn't appropriated for us to spend. So that's why even in the next column of the actual expenditure would have been 273, but because the 8.1 was never approved and yet it has been captured as part of the revenue, it is netted off again. So for me, that was my understanding, that although we have 373, we have NTR, which we collect. And our quarrel with finance all these years is that we collect this money, the areas where it is collected are not funded. This particular year, this NTR, I think accrued from labor externalization. And we have a zero budget for labor externalization, although we collected the money. So I don't know whether that shows that what we are reporting is not a correct picture, because we collect this money, it is received by finance, not by ourselves. What finance gives us is what we spend, which is the 363 against the revenue of 373. So that was my understanding.
Which is going to take us to 1.5. Honorable colleagues says, as we proceed, which is going to take us to 1.5. Which is now 1.5 is under collection of non-tax revenue. You had projected, you collected 8.1. Paragraph 2. What question? Why? But I want you to read it together with the no, with the 1 point, in 1 point, underperformance in architectural plans review and approval, no, that's 1.9. Recruitment companies. It's fair to set up 1.9 is 1.10 here. Okay? Complaints about recruitment companies. And our interest is on this page. Additionally, you know, our interest is on this page. On this page. Additionally, 63,556 migrant domestic workers were reported to have been trained, oriented before departure. The question is, can you give us a breakdown of where you had anticipated to collect the 10 billion? And which is going to take us to the question of how many people, how many migrant workers were externalized from which you collected this money, if that's the only source.
Chair, of our, that is under 1.5, where we provide a response to the query of under collection of non-tax revenue, we have a table there which compares the collections for the previous year, 2023, compared to 2023-24. And we observe that 2022-23 from employment services, and that is the labor externalization program, we collected 12.4. And it is those projections actually that inform, those collections that inform the NTR projections that were made of 10 billion. We had workplace registration and inspection. The previous year had been 1.68. The year in question increased to 1.89. Tender fees, EOC, Equal Opportunities Commission, 100 million for that year. And the total collections for 3-4, which are reflected in the tables we've been discussing, of 8.1 is what is reflected in this table. So to your question, which are the sources, main sources of NTR, they are workplace registration, they are labor externalization, tender fees, and a projection had been made for that year, which had been 10.2, but ultimately the actual fell short by the 2 billion you've referred to.
Honorable, satisfy you?
Chair, just a small, where we were before we came here, he said that money was not released. I just want to know whether when they are releasing the resources, they release according to your budget or by items, to say, because I'm looking at the warrants where they say this man has been warranted. That would be the starting point, that it was not warranted at all.
We had a zero budget for labor externalization for financial year. We only had 2022-23, and even then that came in at the budget committee stage. Even for that year, we hadn't been given money. Even when yearly we were collecting this NTR. So it's at the budget committee stage that a decision was taken to put aside 2 billion Uganda shillings for labor externalization. When we got the figures for this year, that 2 billion was again taken away. So we didn't have funds allocated, although we continued collecting.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Chair, you'll note that session has been a serious issue with various complaints, and since the 2 billion was not there, and yet you know that you must train these staff before they go, I'm sure that is part of the 2 billion that you are asking for. So I want to find out from the PS, what effort did you make to actually ensure that maybe you write to finance to request for this money? I'm raising this, Chair, because when you look at this audit report on page 8, on complaints about recruitment companies in the audit report, you were asking about the numbers, but before I go to that, the Auditor General noted that only 53 recruitment firms were licensed. Out of the 53, only 17 firms submitted regular returns as required by the Employment Act. And you also received 868 complaints, labor complaints during the year, but only 806 were resolved. Additionally, the migrant workers were 63,553 who were reported to have been trained. However, there were no training reports to confirm that the ministry monitored the training and the extent of coverage of the pre-departure orientation, which is a requirement. So I want to find out from you. I know you have indicated that you have staffing challenges. But that aside, with the existing staff who are there, why wouldn't you have even reports in place? Do you need funds to prepare reports? You can actually, because these reports, you can actually summon these labor agencies to provide proof that they trained these migrant workers before they left. So I am wondering and asking, what effort did you make? Do you have any proof that you wrote finance that this is a requirement that you actually need to be able to monitor, to be able to train these migrant workers before they leave the country?
Does a question impact on workplace registration and inspection, which generate revenue and realized a fall on revenue from expected?
Chair, honorable members, in a way, distortions to our budget for the year initially 2022-23. Finance did not provide up to 30 billion Uganda shillings of our budget. And in that year, through a supplementary, they restored the 30 billion Uganda shillings later. The following year, when they gave us indicative figures, and this is the year in question, they gave us indicative figures that took us back to the pre-supplementary position. From July 1st up to present day, about, I think, the last budget call circular, we've been engaging Ministry of Finance on this particular distortion. There are countless number of letters. There are directives of cabinet which we've brought to the attention of Ministry of Finance, which they did not immediately honor. Several, including the organization of these national days that are known, Labor Day, Women's Day, all these days had no funds in the budget. And it has taken directives of cabinet to restore this funding. So that is why we are now saying in the budget for next financial year, the indicative figures we have been given have now restored a lot of these monies that were not provided. So that is how these NTR generating centers or areas were not provided money. Even when we collected money and we made strong arguments to Ministry of Finance, they did not correct it. So that is the challenge we've been having. So how did we go about this? It's not that we abandoned our responsibilities. In the case of labor externalization, we have an online, a web-based system where all clearances are done. Anybody who is cleared, any company that is involved transacts online, and reports can also be generated online. The physical reports would be those of the officers that go out to physically check. Otherwise, we cannot as a ministry clear anybody who is traveling if a submission is not brought online. So if you want to audit those processes, all processes are online. And that's why we can account for every individual that is cleared through that system. The challenges the honorable member is talking about include a lot of transactions that happen off that system. And those are many of the cases of Ugandans you'll hear crying out there when they find themselves in problems. We can't account for them because we didn't clear them, we didn't monitor their training. Some of them go without training. Some of them go because they are invited by friends or relatives. We can't account for those because the system we use to clear is a web-based system. So we have continued, in spite of the challenges that there have been, we have continued to monitor all transactions and handle all our processes on the external employment management information system. And we say as much in our response on page 10.
Thank you very much, PS. Is you report to have trained? The question is, did you train? Because from your explanation, you're saying you didn't have money. Finance never gave you money to deal with that issue. And I think the 2 billion the budget committee gave you was like a give back to the people, the source where you, because they needed this kind of training. The Auditor General is saying you can't prove that you trained. What do you say about that? Because that's a query. You're reporting to have trained. Who does this training for you that you can't, it cannot be proven that you did any training?
Chair, I can't say what the audit team looked at to arrive at that. That all transactions before migrant workers are cleared to travel, job orders are submitted online. There are training companies that are licensed to train. They clear all the people they are training online. It is after training that all those names are conveyed to the ministry. The ministry now clears the licensed companies that are externalizing those people online. Up to the airport when they are cleared, that whole process is online. So if somebody says you don't have training reports, I think we should interrogate the system. Were people cleared for training for these companies? Were they externalized after training? So clearly there is an audit trail which is online on the external employment management information system,
but
which is operated by the ministry.
Let me ask this one.
One question. I want to find out from the accounting officer. Do you have staffing challenges?
Yes, there are staffing challenges, and to beef up the regular staff we have, we recruit temporary staff just to beef up the unit, because the amount of work they have to do in terms of those processes is quite much. And it is from this budget that will then be able even to take on the additional contract staff, because the process of filling vacancies through the Ministry of Public Services are times longer. So without a budget, yes, our operations are affected as well, as far as this function is concerned.
Chair, when you look at compensation of in the accounts, you have an initial budget of 15 billion. This budget was revised to 16.2 billion. The actual performance is 6.2 billion. So how do you explain that variance?